Okay, so welcome to part 2 of our epic look at the top 100 guitarists from Rolling Stone magazine. So we're going to hunt the metal guitarist now. We're at number 50. So let's look at number 50 is Richie Blackmore.
Richie Blackmore. I don't know, when I was growing up, classic rock, I think because of like my stepbrothers and stuff they were into, I always veered towards more Jimmy Page side of things, Tony Iommi, all that kind of stuff. But I was obviously always aware of Richie Blackmore, and I understand more now what he kind of brought to the game. I mean, just so influential on modern metal and modern rock.
Yeah. I mean, he looks exactly like Jasper Carrot as well, which is an unusual look.
Does he do medieval music now?
He does do. We reformed Rainbow. He got Rainbow back together, and I saw some video of it. And he's an older gentleman now, so I'm not going to be anything disrespectful about Richie Blackmore. Phenomenal guitarist. He used the harmonic minor in metal, which is unusual at the time. Yeah, you can hear a lot of basically Yngwie Malmsteen is Richie Blackmore sped up.
Yes.
So plus sweep picking and scallop frets. Not saying anything bad about Yngwie. So that's number 50. Muddy Waters next.
Muddy Waters is amazing. Again, I mean, we've kind of glossed over some of the blues players, but I mean, there's some that are just, I mean,
I think, but once again, you wouldn't have had Hendrix or the Stones without him. So I mean, you can see that's without with these guys. We're at the point now where without these guys, you wouldn't have had a lot of rock. I mean, a lot of it's rock music's a continual evolution, and like with punk, for example, like we had earlier on, we had Pistols and Stooges, and you wouldn't have had the Stooges without the Pistols, without the Stooges. You wouldn't have the Stooges without the Yardbirds. You wouldn't have the Yardbirds without Muddy Waters, and what I mean. It sort of goes.
I encourage people to go further back as well, because I mean, you can go back from Muddy Waters further back, and I mean, you can actually get back to like Marley and places like that with some of the guitar styles.
Who was that person he worked with, Kev?
Ali Farkatura.
Ali Farkatura, phenomenal.
Absolutely king of the desert blues. Absolutely amazing guitarist. And Muddy Waters as well, of course, the greatest quote from the greatest film ever made, Crossroads. Muddy Waters invented electricity.
Yeah, well, I tried to learn that the other week. So we've got 48, Johnny Greenwood, which is, I love Johnny Greenwood. He's probably him and Ed O'Brien are probably two of my favourite guitar players. But I think the thing with Radiohead, it's very much, people don't realise that a lot of the guitar parts they credit to Johnny Greenwood are in fact Ed O'Brien or Tom York. Yeah. And they're very much, all three of them are phenomenal guitar players. Tom York's a great guitarist.
Yeah, I think Johnny Greenwood as well is especially now, I think is, I mean, maybe back in the day he might have classed himself as a guitarist. I don't know. I've never met the chap. But from what I can see from the outside looking in, he's one of our greatest musicians.
I mean, the thing with radio as well, I mean, all five of them, there's a magic to those five people playing together.
Yeah.
But those with Ed O'Brien is in terms of sound design, I mean, he does a lot more of those weird sounds, Ed, than Johnny Greenwood. And Johnny Greenwood makes a lot of those really cool sort of heavy bits, and just my favourite band.
Colin Greenwood as well, the bass player. I mean, he's basically he's the James Jameson of indie.
He does all that sort of. He does a lot of dropping in and out stuff, especially on Airbag, for example. And but I mean, I think what Greenwood's very much like Fripp. It's one of those things. Each album, he just throws away what he's done before and does something different, which is what I hugely admire. I think it's really important to, to keep trying new things. I think by recreating a lot of the problems you get with guitar players is when they stop. They get a lot of success in one thing, and that becomes their thing. That's what I do. And I think, you know, once you get to that point, you're knackered. So you need to keep trying new things. So we've got Stephen Stills next.
Stephen Stills is a great guitarist.
I was listening to Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young today, actually. I was listening to the CSYN album, the Deja Vu.
Yeah.
Makes me cry, that album.
I have to say, as a young man, listening to, you know, things like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and things like that, I'd listen to like Iron Maiden or Pantera, whoever, and I could understand that. I could understand how it was done. But whereas with a lot of the, you know, the things like Stephen Stills played, or even like the Byrds or something like that, I maybe it was because of the alternate tunings and stuff they were using, I couldn't understand how it was being done. And so I never really kind of like went into it. I never really investigated it, because it's just like, well, I can just, you know, play a riff. But I never quite understood. I wish I'd spent more time like learning how that was all put together. Yeah,
it was. I think Crosby, Stills, Nash always reminds me of a continuation of these sort of late period Beatles. It's got that sort of Abbey Road sort of thing to it, but there's a real heartbreak, isn't it? Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. It's a real heavy, properly heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, and okay, so at 46, Jerry Garcia.
We've had friends who've been deadheads, and I've definitely, you know, enjoyed.
I just don't know enough about him, really.
Again, it was just one of those things. It was almost like it was around too much. That it was like, I will get to it later.
It's a weird, isn't it? Because they're quite a country sort of bluesy sort of rock band, really psychedelic-y. I mean, Grateful Dead always thought were quite heavy on stuff. It's got psychedelic country, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Bluesy.
I don't know, maybe
I need to spend more time on it. It's when I haven't. I can only apologise for my ignorance, really. Link Wray, so Rumble. Yeah, hugely influential.
Those guitar sounds are awesome.
Yeah, that's true. Mark Knopfler next.
He's a really good guitarist.
He's a really good guitarist. He's another one. He's a bit like Richie Thompson. Plays quite a similar sort of style to him. He's the first singles I ever bought was a Dire Straits single, and Steve really likes them. Really, Steve really likes them.
Yeah, I like. There's this real kind of, especially with his voice, this real kind of almost morose, very English kind of, you know, understated.
Sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of vibe to it. I must admit, I love several Dire Straits songs, but I can't do a whole album.
I haven't listened to them. The first album's really good. The first album's a bit like that television sort of thing.
Yeah.
I haven't listened. I might listen to that first one tomorrow, actually. I haven't listened to it for a while. But yeah, he's another one that's, you know, I think one of the problems you've got with a lot of these bands is, do you remember when there was those Royal Trust concerts?
Oh, yeah. And yeah.
When we got into rock music, probably about 89, 90, they used to wheel on, you know, Knopfler, Clapton, and these sort of guys in suits. And it's sort of like, you know, if you're into Guns N' Roses and Iron Maiden, this is the least sort of appealing thing ever. So we probably caught the wrong end of their careers in some ways. You know what I mean? Whereas
they were the enemy, weren't they?
Yeah, it just wasn't really aimed at us. So perhaps we missed a bit, you know. And you know those you know Prince. Like, do you remember those all those sort of charity concerts and Prince's Trust concerts? And although there was that glorious Nebworth appearance from, do you remember the Jimmy Page and Robert Plant one at Nebworth?
Yeah.
Where Page was absolutely off his head and flying around the room.
Yeah. Like a little rag doll. It was like somebody got in the rigging above.
Because,
pull him up!
You know, you think, because most of them by that point were all sort of, you know, they were quite behaving themselves. Not Pagey. Page was, yeah, I mean, you know, he's probably only 40, 45 by then. He wasn't that old, was he?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the time, we thought they were like 90 years old, didn't we?
But he's probably only about 45. I don't know, probably not old, but yeah, certainly, yeah. Hubert Sumlin next.
Who is it?
Hubert Sumlin.
Who's Hubert Sumlin?
Killing Floor.
Oh yeah.
That's the only one I know, Killing Floor. That, but massive influence on Hendrix though. So that's the.
Yeah, I don't really know his stuff.
No, I don't either. But once again, I will check it out though. I need to spend some time with that. Mike Bloomfield. Um,
Again, I've probably heard tons of stuff, but I can't.
He's another one that's always talked. It's always in Rolling Stone magazine and things like that. You see these people, so not a massive one for me. Mick Ronson next.
Mick Ronson's amazing.
Love his guitar sound. There's that, there's some of his lead playing is just phenomenal. And it's quite unusual because he used the diminished scale, which is quite unusual in the 70s. And I think in Randy Rhoads you can hear a lot of Mick Ronson.
I think, Bowie is. He's very much like the way he kind of approached things is very much like a lot of the jazz guys did. Actually, is that they surrounded themselves with the right people.
Yeah,
and I don't think I know Fripp has some words to say about it, but a lot of the tracks where you go, oh, that's an amazing Bowie track. To the general public, they say, oh, that's Bowie did that. When in fact, like beginning of what is it that Fripp plays on, the really famous line? Heroes, and all that kind of stuff. That's Fripp, and same thing. A lot of the stuff that was Ronson doing that. That sound of that early stuff that's Mick Ronson.
Imagine that though. Having like if you're David Bowie, you've got your guitarist is Mick Ronson, and then you've got Robert Fripp, then Adrian Belew, then Stevie Ray Vaughan.
That's right. Yeah.
Then Reeves Gabriels.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad run of guitar players, is it?
That's what he wanted, couldn't he?
I mean, that's just.
The one that always sticks in my mind is Nile Rodgers saying about Let's Dance, and he said when Bowie brought it to him, he said it was like a folk ballad.
Yeah.
And people have to understand that there's a song. A really good example, if anybody can, it's quite a bit avant-garde film. Is the is it Goddard, the film Sympathy for the Devil, and it's about the writing of the song Sympathy for the Devil, the Rolling Stones, and it shows like all the different permutations of them working it out.
We'll have to have Keith soon, won't we? I'm sure he's got to be in here somewhere. Right, okay, so number 40, Tom Morello.
I mean, on our generation, massive influence,
I think you wouldn't have had any of the sort of new metal stuff. I mean, he's bringing in a lot of hip hop. Once again, I think a lot of it was Rage as a band. But I remember the first time we saw them on TV, it was a bit like there's two moments I remember from being a kid, from mainstream TV, and one of them Smells Like Teen Spirit, and one of them's Rage Against the Machine doing Killing the Name. On the Word, was it on the Word? Or?
It was on the Word. I actually remember we was all quite inebriated in a Chinese takeaway.
I remember, yeah.
About 30 of us. And I remember it came on and everybody kind of went silent. I think somebody dropped their chow mein.
Yeah. It was really exciting, wasn't it?
Well, the thing was, I think where before a lot of that kind of crossover had happened, what little it had happened, it was all very kind of forced in a way. It was like this meets this, where these were like really quite traditional pentatonic riffs.
Yeah, with that whammy sound. That whammy was really influential, and then he is actually a really good guitar player, especially later on with the Audio Slave stuff.
Yeah.
He's a really good guitarist, and he's a really interesting guy, and I think he's a really cool guy, especially really honest and a man of real integrity, and very sharp dude as well. He's one of these, I like Tom Morello. He's cool. Steve the Colonel Cropper.
I love Steve Cropper.
Yeah, I mean, he was all those little guitar parts. The way he's another one. He's massively influential, and to be on Sitting on the Dock of Bay, Green Onions, Soul Man, all those. He's another one you can really hear that split diodes and triads at the top of the neck thing, and
Well, again, I think people have to, a lot of those, the Stax guys, the Motown guys, the Funk Brothers, all this kind of stuff. They were all jazz dudes. They were jazz players. They were jazz players in like the 50s, 60s, whenever. Going around doing 2 or 3, gigs a night or however many it might be. And then they came into the Motown stuff or the Stax stuff, and
We haven't
Just
had
can't.
Nile Rodgers yet, have we? No, Rodgers,
Yeah.
to be honest, should. Okay, so here we go next. The Edge.
Yeah, cool.
So the Edge is that's where all that worship music guitar came from, isn't it? Well, if you ever go to a contemporary Christian church, it all sounds like the Edge and Coldplay. The thing with the Edge's guitar, in all seriousness, the Edge is I like the Edge's guitar player. I love those sounds. He's a very good sound designer. Brought a lot of different stuff into rock music. He's very distinctive. Unfortunately, it was massively ripped off.
Yeah.
I think the 80s stuff still sounds really fresh. And all those, there's a lot of those modulated delay sounds sound really cool. But once again, it's hard.
Yeah.
You can't take it out of context now, because when we got into rock music, it was already there, wasn't it? So we didn't really.
Yeah. If you play a guitar with a delay on it now, somebody's going to say the Edge.
Oh, the Hedge.
The Hedge. And again, it's that thing of the early U2 albums, the first couple, especially as well. You can see some like the live footage. They were, storming.
They're still phenomenal live. Actually, every time I've ever seen anything live, they're brilliant. I mean, it just sort of passed me by, but it's not being disrespectful. I just didn't connect with it. Mick Taylor.
Yeah.
Stones guitarist. I haven't really spent a lot of time with Exile on Main Street, to be honest. I did have it on CD a while back, but I haven't got a great deal of memories of it. I just don't really know it myself, and so
yeah. It's always interesting with the Stones how, again, whether it be, I think with Brian Jones actually there was more of a separation, Brian Jones and Keith Richards, and then from sort of Mick Taylor and Ronnie Wood and all that, it all got into that intertwined kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was I just don't really know it. So 36 is Randy Rhoads, who died at 25, which seems hard to even get your head around, isn't it? But those first two Aussie records are two of my favourite albums. The lead playing is I mean, I'd say those solos are perfect, especially the Mr. Crowley one. Then look, hairs on my arm just even thinking about them. So,
yeah.
I mean, I was so into them when I was a kid. I learned how to play D. I learned how to play a lot of those lead parts. The way he double tracked the solos like that, I just I can't even get my head around he did it. How he did it when he was 22 years old. I mean,
that's mad, isn't it?
And his vibrato was so good. His riffs were really good. He was, I think, in terms of metal lead guitar, he's probably up there with your Dave Murray and Adrian Smiths as the best, to be honest.
It's very easy to sort of say. I think it's very easy to sort of mythologize a lot of guitarists, especially after they've passed away so young. I do think with Randy Rhoads that there was a lot more. To scope. I mean, Hendrix is another example as well. The stuff he was doing at the end before he passed away was really quite experimental. And I'd love to have seen where Randy Rhoads was going. You could see some of the compositions he was coming up with. He was getting more and more.
Especially on the second Aussie album, it's quite. There's some odd timing stuff on there. He was a one-off. He was the real deal, Randy Rhoads.
Yeah.
I was absolutely obsessed with him. Remember when I first met you, I was really 14, 15, I was obsessed with Randy Rhoads.
Yeah.
So we've got John Lee Hooker next.
Again, just, without John Lee Hooker, you wouldn't have...
He's another one. He used to play odd bars and, he was telling a story, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that direct link, He was like one of the younger old these guys, but these guys that were it's quite hard to sort of understand that some guys sitting in a wooden building, a bar, whatever you want to call it, in 1915 or whatever the hell it was, have a link then to things happening 50, 60, 100 years later.
So next we've got Curtis Mayfield, and Move On Up's probably the best songs ever written, isn't it? It's like, remember driving around your car when we were kids listening to that? It was brilliant.
Oh, yeah. Curtis Mayfield's, he's a great guitarist. And I think interesting as well what he did with everything, the way, a bridge from sort of soul into funk. It wasn't really too much of one or the other. It was, it had a real general appeal. It wasn't overindulgent. It had a social message. Most of his music, really good stuff, man. Really good.
So we've got Prince next.
Prince is amazing.
Do you remember another one when we were kids? We came back to, I think we were staying over at my house, and we put on, and there's a Prince concert on, and we didn't know Prince. It was the early '90s, nothing else to watch. Put it on, a couple of tracks in, we were like metal kids. By about the third song, we were loving it. Do you remember?
Because again, at the point we got on, it was all like Kiss.
Yeah.
And the back dance and all that kind of stuff, which I love now because I can sort of see the context of it. But we didn't know that he was a
full metal, so we weren't. This Prince guy, and then he was like, and he started playing guitar. Bloody hell! He's a phenomenal guitar player.
I love seeing as well. He managed to do that thing. Some people do it and they come across as quite cocky, but there's some people who they look like they should be on the stage.
Yeah, I mean, there's that footage of him at that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing.
That's what I was going to say about, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's George Harrison and some other people. And
it's Dan Harrison, it's Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, a couple of others, I
mean, if it was anybody else, you'd sort of say it's a bit cheeky. He was so cool with the way he did it. I mean, he obviously just went and said, I'm just going to absolutely annihilate all of you. I'm going to make you look ridiculous.
But he's smiling while he's doing it. He knows what he's doing. And it's all for the right reason, And
I love the way he's really like he pushed into the notes very, very like Santana or McLaughlin. He's a really aggressive player, really, really pushing the player, wasn't he?
And as well, a lot of people don't realise that Purple Rain was actually the one the record you hear was actually a live recording.
Is it?
Yeah. I can't find it anymore, but there was actually footage of them playing it, and the live recording's been edited. It actually goes on goes on a little bit longer. But yeah, on the single, you can hear a little bit of the audience as well. So it's like all that vocal, all those guitars, all live.
The Radiohead My Lungs live, isn't it? And they
Is it? I didn't know.
Yeah, and some of the 70s King Crimson stuff as well. Oh. The nice thing, if you can do it, it must be a nice way to record, but obviously you have to have competent sort of... we would never have. So Billy Gibbons next.
I love Billy Gibbons. Yeah, I think he's great.
Really lovely rhythm feel as well.
I think he's got a real sense of humour to his playing. Knows what he is, knows what he does. Yeah, pinched harmonics. Just really cool.
We used to cover Cheap Sunglasses, didn't we?
Yeah. We
should do that again. I like that.
Good, yeah.
Okay. Ry Cooder next.
Ry Cooder's great, yeah. I mean, really.
The soundtrack album was really good.
Paris, Texas.
Paris, Texas is really good. That's the only one I know of his, really. I don't
he
know.
Did well. He worked on a lot of the Buena Vista Social Club and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, again, a guitarist that's kind of actually doing something different or challenging themselves or, trying to make new ideas.
Which is what it's all about, yeah.
Take root, love that.
So we've got Elmore James next.
Again, these are all kind of like the primary colours, aren't they?
Yeah, I think this gentleman was the chap who's one of the main sort of Dust My Broom, wasn't it? The slide thing, when it's
you still got Cream in the '60s were still covering that kind of stuff, weren't they?
Yeah, and same Fleetwood Mac and all those guys. So that's if it wasn't for people like Elmore James, you wouldn't have had Fleetwood Mac. You wouldn't have had all those sort of the British blues revival, which is bizarre because the time Dust My Brain came out in '51, and then the blues revival in the UK started early to mid '60s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was 60. When was Blues Breakers? Clapton Blues. When was the first? I have to look it up.
I don't know. It was 60. I'm going to guess 64.
Don't know. I'll have to find out. Blues Breakers. I've got it here. What is it? It was 66.
66. Okay.
So that was, that era, that stuff. That's kind of, I always think that John Mayall and, but obviously that stuff had been going on in the clubs. What was that place in South London? It was going on, wasn't it? It was always that blues scene had been growing, and you got the Stones came out of that as well, didn't they? So
yeah, and then in America you got Joe Boyd and people like that, and you sort of building it up.
It's bizarre because basically it's only 10 years after those original, 10, 15 years after those original recordings. Basically, a load of white middle class people basically stole the sound of an American black people. And it's if that had happened, that's like a hip hop album coming out in 2005, and then a load of white middle class people doing it now. But at the time, it just because there wasn't the connection. There was, those records were gone out of print, and then they'd been rediscovered in the UK. But at the time, it wasn't an era where all music was available at all times, was it?
It's an interesting thing, isn't it? That a lot of we talked about this ourselves before. If the actual record buying public, let's take the UK for as an example, the actual record buying public, by that I mean people that would actually go and spend money on music, is probably not as big as you might imagine. And I think for anybody to sort of go over the top to become like a big act, you need to go out of your demographic, your base. So for example, when we were kids, NWA, we grew up in a small rural town in Northamptonshire, and NWA was a massive thing.
It was I had a tape with NWA on one side and Europe on the other. Exactly. The only two sorts of music you're allowed to listen to at our schools: NWA and Public Enemy, or Europe and Whitesnake. So,
yeah.
Unless you want to get your head kicked in, you weren't allowed to like any other types of music, hip hop or heavy metal.
But like Public Enemy as well. If you imagine all these kids sitting in a park drinking cider in a small town, a small post-industrial town in Northamptonshire, going, yeah, you're right, 911 is a joke.
I don't think we really. I have to say, I didn't really understand it, but there was a feeling of rebelliousness and
punk.
It was a especially in the Public Enemy stuff.
I can imagine a lot of that blues stuff at the time to like English.
I think would have been massive. I mean, we weren't middle class, we were working class, but I think it would have been massively appealing to there's a danger to those records, isn't there?
Yeah.
Scotty Moore next.
Yeah.
Elvis guitarist. Once again, rock. Country music plus blues equals rock and roll, basically.
Yeah, again, he's another one where, he was the guy playing that stuff. You know, so people always say Elvis Presley, Elvis Presley, Elvis Presley. But that really early stuff, that's what you're hearing is Scotty Moore with Elvis singing.
No, I like all that stuff as well. So 28, Johnny Ramone, which is another person who's part of the ongoing dialogue between British and American punk. And that goes back to the blues and via Yardbirds, via MC5, and the Stooges, back onto and then the Ramones, then back to the Pistols, back to the Misfits, and the Kennedys, and there's and back to the Jason Mary Chain and all the British stuff. So there's always that continual dialogue between Britain and America with regard to punk, Johnny Ramone. I mean, some of those songs are fantastic. But I mean, imagine hearing that for the first time in the 70s. It must be incredible.
Yeah, massively. Yeah.
Bo Diddley, who invented his own rhythm, basically. So he had his own feel for the instrument, superb rhythm player.
Yeah, a massive influence on bands like the Stones and I think he was one of the guys that really using that, like the Bo Diddley rhythm and stuff. It was very populist. You can imagine in the clubs and stuff, you're in a club in London in the early 60s and, Bo Diddley comes on. You can imagine that's quite a thing.
It must have been incredibly exciting and very, very hard to get that feel right as well. Just once again, there's a magic to the chemistry of those rhythms, isn't there?
how did he that box guitar?
I don't know. Well, you know, I suppose he would have played a Steinberg if could have got hold of one.
Well, obviously, at the time they just weren't available.
Well, you know, he was a precursor to the great Steinberg guitarist, I suppose. That was his main, you know. Anyway, 26, Brian May.
Brian May is a phenomenal guitarist.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and also as well, one of the things I really love about Brian May is that he genuinely has his own sound. They've been knocking around for years amongst the engineer kind of underground. But there's multi-tracks of Bohemian Rhapsody and, you know, Killer Queen and all this kind of stuff, which I've still got. And, you know, you solo his guitar on Bohemian Rhapsody, and, you know, if you just pulled that up just one day, you know, as a guitarist and just went, right, this is my sound, people would go, what is this really like nasally kind of weird, middly kind of sound? And yet you put it in the context of the band and it's perfect.
Yeah,
absolutely
real team player, isn't he? And I've got that. I was listening to that Starfleet thing the other day, the Starfleet thing. There's Eddie Van Halen and Brian May, and you can hear, like, you know, most guitarists you can't tell who's who, but they're so distinctive in their playing. And Brian May and Eddie Van Halen, and there's a, you know, he's just a magical guitarist. I mean, he's one of the things I find frustrating is you can't tell which guitarist is which in a lot of stuff in the last few years. Whereas with Brian May, you can really tell it's him. And it's very distinctive, and he thinks about the record rather than his individual part. He sees the bigger picture, and that's why he's so cool. He thinks orchestrally with the guitar.
Well, I mean, whatever you think of it, you know, if you go to sort of like late era Queen, guitar's very background. You know, really sort of, he was, you know, I don't know, maybe he was massively unhappy about that decision. I don't know, but I doubt it. You know, but he seemed very happy to just sort of do whatever was necessary. So that's great.
I have to say, he seems like a super nice dude as well. Really. So Tony Iommi next. So what can you say about Tony Iommi? The riffs, isn't it? So it's, you know, the riffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember we went to, I think it was it an Ozfest? It was one of the last times Sabbath were going to play. One of the 27 last times Sabbath were going to play, and I remember it was the one where Bill Ward was supposed to play, but he just had some sort of unfortunately had a heart attack or something. Yeah. But anyway, they were just phenomenal. I remember we went thinking, well, this is going to be funny. It's going to be a load of old fellas, and you know, they were just absolutely superb. And I remember seeing the stage, and on the side of the stage were a lot of the bands that had played that day watching. You know, a lot of the guitarists from the other bands, you know, very modern, very technical, very proficient kind of metal guitarists. And then there's Tony Iommi, like literally playing like 4 notes.
I have to say, you know, those first 6 Sabbath albums are, you know, they're the Bible for riffs for me. Children's Grave, Symptom of the Universe, and even though I've heard Paranoid, and you know, I've heard those records probably too much, a bit like the Beatles. I've just heard those albums. I mean, I just know those songs so well, but I love them. And funny enough, recently I've got into the Heaven and Hell, the first Dio album.
Yeah, that's really good. That's
really good, isn't it?
Dio's amazing.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal singer. Yeah. But the real magic is you know, the original Sabbath, especially the chemistry between Tony and Bill. Actually, I love Bill drumming. There's every track's a winner, and there's what's that? Hand of Doom.
Yeah.
And you know, we were really into like Cathedral and stuff, and you know, you never had Cathedral without Sabbath, and
and also his sound as well.
Sure. Yeah, the down tuning and the very best, the very, very best. So we've got next Angus Young, another one. It's a bit weird because I always think of the most impressive thing guitar wise about AC/DC is Malcolm for me. I love Malcolm. Guitarist.
Yeah.
And but they're AC/DC are a great rock and roll band, and I wish I'd seen them with the original lineup, or the second.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, wouldn't see the
I
original.
mean, as you said, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, the intro riff on Back in Black is Malcolm, right?
Yeah, it's got and I love the way there's a bounce to AC/DC stuff. And I remember when Metallica were doing the Black album, and they said, we're trying to do AC/DC, and it's like, have you not heard AC/DC?
Yeah.
Because the drums bounce. There's a bounce to it, like a...
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I mean, no disrespect to Lars, but it's not that sort of feel, is it? So it's different things. Who we got next? Buddy Guy.
Buddy Guy's brilliant. Buddy Guy's great. He's one of these guys that I think, because he was, one of the main kind of like electric Chicago blues kind of guys, I think he was so influential. And interesting as well, I remember listening to an interview with him, and he was saying about like, everything comes from somewhere. And he said like the guitar sound he was getting, he was trying to sound like horn players.
Yeah, there's definitely that single line thing, and that's and obviously you wouldn't have Clapton, you wouldn't have Hendrix or Page without him. So yeah, big one. So Frank Zappa next. I think Zappa was not really he was a very good guitarist, but no, he wasn't just a guitarist. I always think of Zappa as an arranger and composer.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
and some of his material, the lyrical stuff hasn't aged well, to be honest.
No.
And I'm not, I don't, it's probably best not to talk about that, but his lead playing, and especially live, there's moments on there that some of the absolutely phenomenal lead playing. And there's also, I think he used to use the lead solos as an opportunity to do a bit of improvisation live. So he was actually improvising.
Yes. Yeah.
It's quite weird because a lot of the stuff, these sort of really complex compositions that he did. And then the solo part would be over sort of very simple sort of... but Watermelons in Easter Hay is obviously, pretty special. So he was phenomenal. Anything else you want to Zappa?
I'd say personally, for me, it's really hard to talk about Zappa because he's become such a sacred cow. But
I'm not keen on that.
I'd say that if anything, he was too prolific.
Yeah, there was the element of I remember the first Zappa stuff I ever heard was the Shut Up and Play Your Guitar. No, not Shut Up and Play. You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore, which was like a 8 CD box set, which at the time, it goes to a lot of the 80s bands stuff. And I've gone through Zappa phases being really into it, but I haven't for probably about 10 years. So perhaps I'm due a reappraisal. But I mean,
there's things like Peaches and Regalia, which is just
amazing. Yeah,
one of the greatest pieces of music ever written.
Yeah, I mean, I had that wedding.
As the actual, the guitar solo thing, I think I kind of understand what he was trying to do, but sometimes it bangs on a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was a different time, wasn't it? You can't judge what they did then by what we do, those guitar solos.
But as you said, composition.
Guitar solos in the 70s, weren't they?
Yeah. As you said, compositionally amazing.
Amazing. So we've got we haven't had Steve Howe, have we?
I don't reckon he's going to be there, Matt.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, he's not particularly my favourite guitarist, but he's someone who is a very good guitar player. It's not really my cup of tea, but
I think I know where this is heading. I think I could guess what number one's going to be.
So, Chet Atkins next.
Yeah, amazing.
Right, but we haven't had. So we've got Carlos. So Chet Atkins, phenomenal player. Yeah. Who else we got?
What number are we at?
21.
Okay, so who's in 20?
20's Carlos Santana, and his Magical Blues Box.
And his Magical Blues Box, yeah. I do, again, not the recent stuff I'm not a fan of, but, those old albums, and especially that footage of them at Woodstock.
Yeah, Soul Sacrifice, isn't it? The
Santana
was really special, wasn't it? James Burton, obviously another one, early rock and roll pioneer.
Really good.
Yeah, just another rock and roll pioneer one. Les Paul invented looping and overdubbing. How High the Moon had stuff that was sped up to twice the speed. Obviously, you know, the guitar he invented as well alongside the guys at Gibson. So, you know, yeah, a lot to. I went to a stage listening to this part. I might have to dig that out again. So 17, Neil Young.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
phenomenal.
a big fan of Neil Young, and I'm a big fan of Neil Young's playing as well.
I am. I like his. He's another one. He really attacks it as well. Really.
It's funny actually talking about Zappa and saying about improvisation. You know, I know Neil Young likes a bit of improvisation, but he always strikes me as a man when he's improvising that he's just, well, I'm just going to do this now. I'm just going to hit it, or I'm going to play this note, or I'm going to do this, or you know, he really is just kind of like, you know, following.
Yeah, no, I like Neil Young. It's cool.
You remember when he there's that footage of him playing at Glastonbury that year?
He did Day in the Life.
Yeah, they ended on Rocking the Free World, and the end of Rocking the Free World lasts about 20 minutes.
Yeah, he was brilliant though, wasn't he? Loved it. He was really great. He was absolutely so. 16. Now this is interesting. Derek Trucks.
I'm a fan of Derek Trucks. He's
more a better guitarist than Robert Fripp and John McLaughlin.
I mean, how do you quantify these things? Influence-wise, absolutely not.
I mean, I'd say, I mean, if you are going to have a new guitarist, I'd have Annie Clark in here. I think she's a phenomenal guitarist. St Vincent, I love her playing.
I do think Derek Trucks is, you know, I mean, the phrasing is just
great. He's a great player.
You know, it's like, I don't know, he's like listening to a great soul singer. You know, I don't know how you play slide guitar like that.
No, he's another one I'd like to listen to more. So 15, Freddie King.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, they call it the Three Kings, don't they? Albert King, Freddie King, and BB King. You know, they're the three sort of like. I'm pretty sure BB King's going to be heading our way very soon.
Albert King in a minute. Yeah. So okay, so 14, Dave Gilmour.
I love Dave Gilmour's playing, and I must admit, as I've gotten older, I've appreciated it more.
Me too. Yeah, I love his playing. I love his
actually, I'd say I really liked it when I was a kid, and then I think as you go into that stupid kind of period of like, if you're not playing at 1,000,000 miles per hour, then it's like, you know, oh, it's rubbish. Field players, what's that about? And then you go back to it.
I don't think he is a field. I think he's one of those guys he is bluesy, but he's also another one who's very melodic, and he's not bluesy like Clapton. He's bluesy in he's very expressive bends.
Yeah,
and he uses lots of interesting guitar sounds. You know, I love the univibe sound he uses, or the phaser sound he uses in Animals. I love the Animals album. That's fantastic. But I love that run of Medal through to Animals. I can't say it. And I love the live. You remember that Live at Gdansk album he did? Fairly recent, well, last 20 odd years. That's a great record. That is.
I mean, for anybody out there as well that's, you know, hasn't really delved into Pink Floyd, or you only know like the big, you know, the things, you know, the you know, Dark Side of the Moon and things like that. I think, you know, it's quite easy to sort of like look at Dave Gilmour and, you know, Pink Floyd or whatever it is now, and sort of like see, you know, some old men dressed as Jeremy Clarkson. But if you go back to like the Live at Pompeii, our friend Nick Duke, I remember him saying about, you know, the Live at Pompeii is basically like the birth of modern psych rock.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's properly awesome.
You know, it's just really, really interesting. And I get the impression with Gilmour that he's not just throwing out pentatonic lick. You know, he's thinking about what he's doing. His note choice is really good.
When there's that footage of Floyd reforming that Live 8 thing in 2005. Oh, yeah. I can't watch it. You wouldn't know. It just makes me cry. I think it's one of those things. Being an older gentleman, a lot of those sort of things really, like Crosby, Stills and Nash, or the Beatles and Floyd. It just makes me bawl now for some reason. Yeah, makes me cry. So 13 is Albert King.
as I said, the three kings, they're all going to be in there. I'm sure BB King's going to be here in a minute.
Yeah, because obviously you wouldn't have Cream or any of that stuff without him. Stevie Ray Vaughan is an interesting one because I think Stevie Ray Vaughan is a phenomenal guitar player, he's brilliant. But I think a lot of it was context in the he was playing like a 60s blues rock guitar player in the 80s, which obviously no one else was doing. So it's remarkable by context. Even though he was a brilliant guitar player, there's a footage of him doing a solo show and he breaks a string and he keeps playing, he plays guitar behind the back. He must have been so excited at the time.
Oh, massively, yeah. And also, he used like really heavy gauge strings. I discovered quite really high action and really like his low E was like a 52 or something like that.
He really digs into it, doesn't he?
Really powerful.
No, yeah, and another one I probably need to listen to more. We haven't had Eric Johnson, have we, either?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be in there. I don't think. See, that's it, as you said earlier. This is a different world. This kind of list, isn't it?
Alvin Lee, not had him. Lots of guitarists not in it. George Harrison's next.
What number is this?
This is 11.
George Harrison's great, a great guitarist.
He's on the lead on Something's fantastic. His slide playing so distinctive. I mean, he's another one. There's two things I can think of immediately about the Beatles that are so distinctive: George Harrison's slide playing and Ringo's snare. And obviously, you know, the Beatles with the 12 string and the Rickenbacker, and I love the Beatles. I don't understand people like the Beatles.
I mean, you don't really need to say anything about George Harrison, do you? I mean,
fantastic. Pete Townshend next, number 10.
Yeah,
so Townshend is, obviously probably the most rock, in terms of rock rhythm guitar from the 60s. He was fantastic.
He's another one as well. I think he's a lot technically. He's a lot better technical player than people think he is.
Yeah, those the jangle stuff and the strumming and
that windmill thing is really hard to do.
It is. I've tried it.
Yeah, you just end up hitting your hand on the guitar, and you end up with bleeding hand. It's really hard to do.
So number 9, Duane Allman.
Again, he's another one of these guys that's kind of been mythologized.
But to be fair, the end of Layla is pretty special.
Yeah,
that's one of my favourite pieces of music.
I'd argue as well that most of his, I mean, it's absolutely superb. But he was he played with what was the Muscle Shoals band, Swampers?
Yeah, he's on that. He's on an Otis Redding record, isn't he?
Yeah, he's on a lot. He's on a lot of Aretha Franklin stuff. So
Otis Redding's version of Hey Jude.
Yes, I think he is. I think you're right. I could be wrong on that, but I think you are right. But again, he's one of these guys that I think actually some of his best work is on things that you don't even know he's on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know the Allman Brothers stuff particularly well, but yeah, no, he's great. So number 8, Eddie Van Halen, which was probably, apart from Randy Rhoads, my childhood hero, really. I mean, when I first met you, I think the first thing I did was show you that I could play Eruption by Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah. It was like a badge of honour, wasn't it?
Completely lacking in social skills as a 15-year-old boy. All I could think to do was to try and, show off, basically. And I might be completely inept socially, but look, I can play Eruption by Van Halen. And
would you say he's the first shred guitarist?
Well, I would say Alvin Lee might be, the 10 years after dude, or Hendrix, I suppose. I mean, Richie Blackmore. But I think the thing with Eddie Van Halen is he mixed, Steve Hackett was doing the tapping thing, but he mixed it all up, and he mixed it up in a way that was very, very unique, very interesting rhythmically. I love Eddie Van Halen, and there's the first Van Halen album. I used to listen to it over and over again. I was obsessed with it, and and Van Halen 4 and Dive Down, and we had really good riffs as well. Unchained was a great riff. The intro to Hot for Teacher. I mean, but I even like the Sammy Hagar era stuff. I like 5150 and OU 812. I don't care what anyone says. I love them.
There's also from a recording point of view, those first few albums, there's this weird thing where I think you know, a modern way of recording is a lot of double tracking and a lot of like, you know, fleshing things out. But I can't remember what song it is, but there's one of the Van Halen songs that comes in is, you know, Eddie's guitar is just on one side, and there's nothing.
The whole of the first album, it's virtually only on one side.
Yeah, and then like there's just this reverb, and the drums are kind of like in the distance a bit of bass, and it's really sparse, but really exciting.
It's set like you're at a club gig, yeah. It's like, so the bass is in one and the guitar's in the other. And there's something about that first Van Halen album that just, I listened to it over and over again when I was a kid, you know, and I watched there's a Live Without a Net. I used to watch that video over and over again, and there's the bit where Eddie does the solo in there. I think I must have watched it.
He sits down, takes a cigarette out, and just puts it in the end.
Sparks up a fag, then puts the fag in the end of his guitar, and he's just the coolest, you know. And you know, he's obviously, I mean, yeah, he had to have part of his tongue removed in the end, obviously, and he was.
I mean, it looked cool at the time.
But you know, cancer's not funny, is it? So let's not mythologize these things. But but he was massive influence on me, and I think, you know, that's where all the, you know, Steve Vai, and I mean, it doesn't look like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani are going to be in it, but I mean, when we were kids, Vai and Satriani were around, but I love some of Steve Vai and Joe Satriani stuff as well. But
here's a question: would Van Halen,
yeah,
you know, Van Halen, the guitarist, you know, would we be talking about him now if there wasn't a David Lee Roth attached to him?
Well, I think that's the thing. I mean, David Lee Roth was I mean, the whole band were brilliant, actually. Michael Anthony as well is great. I love it. The David Lee Roth wasn't the best singer, but Michael Anthony's a really good singer. Michael Anthony does all the high parts.
Yeah.
You know, they did all harmonies and loads of that stuff. Not necessarily, no. I mean, I love David Roth as a character. I think he's brilliant. You know, he's just went off. He's like a cartoon character. You know, I'm not. I love that. I love Eddie Van Halen. I'd love to meet Eddie Van Halen. I'm at the point where how many times I've looked at buying an Eddie Van Halen guitar. I think, you know,
we've all done it.
I'd love that guitar. So next we've got Chuck Berry.
What number is this, Matt?
Number 7.
Chuck Berry. I mean,
once again, you wouldn't have rock and roll without Chuck Berry, would you? Without Johnny B. Good, and you know, when I think of Chuck Berry, unfortunately, I think of Back to the Future, but obviously he was the dude that, you know, he started it all. So it's not being disrespectful, is it?
I think those you know, those guitar intros and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure he was taking them and, you know, repurposing them from elsewhere, as you know, all good musicians do. But I think it seems to be that those kind of things are the things that stuck with your Keith Richards and your, you know, your whoever it might be at the time, you know.
Hendrix as well. I think the showmanship as well influenced Hendrix as well.
Yeah.
So we're on to number 6. Got BB King.
I'm a big fan of BB King. I love his voice. And his guitar playing is unique.
Yeah, he's got a very vocal, vocal guitar player. No, he's
very, very, I don't know, very sort of, I don't know how to describe it really. Very soulful guitar playing.
So we got Jeff Beck next, number 5.
I mean, I don't even know how do you even describe Jeff Beck?
He's quite interesting. He's a bit of a one-off, Jeff Beck, isn't he? And I like that. Apparently, he doesn't play the guitar a lot. He likes to build cars and stuff. And because you listen to his work throughout his career, everything. He's another one. He's continually. He's always had a sort of a bit of blues. Blues is the kind of root of his sound. But if you listen to like Truth and Beckola, and then compare it to Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop, or the stuff he's doing now, where he's doing, I mean, he did 2 Mahavishnu covers the last time. There's that video of him at Ronnie Scott's, and he opens with a Mahavishnu cover, and he's doing full-on jazz rock.
Yeah.
And the stuff he does with the whammy bar is remarkable. He does this sort of Indian-type phrasing with the whammy bar.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do. And I don't really know how he does it, but he's really got this whammy bar thing going. He's a really, really one-off, really unusual guitar player.
Quite sort of, I think most people, when you say Jeff Beck, most mainstream kind of, the culture kind of would just think of, the Yardbirds and the old blues rock kind of stuff, this kind of thing. But he's,
I mean, his like Beckola was in Truth with sort of where you got Truth was kind of where Zeppelin came from, and that stuff. But he's very progressive. He's done lots of different stuff, Blow by Blow, and then like I
stuff
said,
with Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, exactly. And if you compare him to what he's doing, and then what Clapton's doing, Clapton's basically stayed in the same.
He's stayed in the same lane, hasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he's obviously Clapton's done interesting work as well, and an acoustic album and all that. And but I think Beck's more my cup of tea. I think he's a more interesting player, and his bands are really good. He always has good people in his band. I think he had Nevada Michael Walden for a while as well, and
yeah.
And he had Jan Hammer in the 70s, didn't he, as well? And he had those. He's more that sort of dude, isn't he? So yeah, no, I like his playing a lot. Number 4, Keith.
It's Keith, isn't it?
It's going to be Keith.
Right.
Because Rolling Stone loves the Stones. But obviously there's a magic to his playing as well. I'm not being, definitely a magic to Keith. And he's, in terms of rock and roll.
About Keith Richards,
Yeah, you're not going to. He's one of the great characters of rock, isn't he? And he's just, he's one of these guys at the point of not being real. He's a cartoon.
Yeah.
So number 3, Jimmy Page.
It's Jimmy Page, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I'm not going to tell my Jimmy Page story. I think I've told it twice already on my YouTube channel. But yeah, How's the Holy was my favourite Zeppelin album.
Yeah,
I love the later period. How's the Holy, the Achilles' Last Stand is probably my favourite Jimmy Page song.
he's such a good composer and arranger.
It's the arranging, yeah. I mean, and also it's the arranging of the later stuff, and then the live stuff from 69, 70, when they were incredible. Obviously, the later live stuff is a bit more, variable. Some of it's brilliant, actually. Some of it's not so brilliant. But yeah, I mean, I remember watching that 69 footage. The black and white footage from Denmark, 68.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I'll be controversial as well. I'll say that Jimmy Page, as a guitar kind of like shredder, if you want to, because I think a lot of people put like the whole lot of love solo down and all that, and it's good, but I mean technically it's a bit all over the shop, isn't it?
Well, he was never the most accurate player, but I mean he's there. Like I say, he had the ideas, and that's what was important. And I think that's the thing with Page. Why I love Page's stuff is that he had lots of ideas and lots of ideas and lots of ideas, and then he didn't, and then and then he didn't ever again. Really, I mean, there's some good bits on those Page and Plant albums, isn't there? The one that Steve Albini produced, got a couple of good bits on it, but really, I mean, he I think he just ran out of ideas or stopped worshipping the devil. Or something. I mean, lost his relationship with the devil, and they wanted to.
We got 2 left, yeah.
So do you want to get?
I reckon. Right. So we haven't had Clapton yet.
Yeah.
And I reckon number one's going to be Hendrix.
Yeah. So you're right. Clapton's number 2. It's not my cup of tea, to be honest, but I can see how revolutionary it was at the time and how exciting it was. And I think some of the, he was the one who influenced Van Halen, and in context, it must have been incredibly exciting. It just didn't, but by the time we got into music, it wasn't such a big thing. I love the Cream stuff. I like some of the Yardbirds stuff.
Yeah, I'm a big Cream fan. Yeah, I like that stuff a lot.
The acoustic album's got some nice moments. He's had a bit. I mean, have you seen that documentary that was on about him a while back?
I didn't know.
Yeah, difficult man. Difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some unpleasantness and
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of tragedy in his life as well.
a lot of very sad stuff, and also he had a lot of problems with his life, and he said some things that weren't very nice, and
he did do that.
which is for somebody who's made a career out of blues is a bit off.
Yeah.
But I think
yeah,
people make mistakes when they're drunk out of their heads, but not my place to say. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Not my place to comment on it. So number one, obviously it's Jimi Hendrix, isn't it? He was the greatest. He was from another planet as far as I'm concerned. He was.
Yeah, I highly recommend. Even if you think you know Hendrix, dig a little bit deeper. Some of the unreleased stuff, stuff that was released posthumously. Some of the stuff he was doing at the end was, really going out there. Really experimental.
He was. I mean, Machine Gun is the one that I always think of, and Voodoo Child. I mean, he came along and he was completely innovative and brilliant and psychedelic.
Yeah.
And then he went melodic soul psychedelic. Then he went jam psychedelic. Then he went jazz rock, and then he died. And everything he did was brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, there's no point really saying anything else, is there? I mean,
So, and I think if he'd stayed alive, I think he probably still would be where he is now, because he was, his phrasing was just bizarre. It was like backwards phrasing. It was just, the Red House, but if you watch 5 different versions of Red House, it was like, each would be completely different.
Yeah.
And I don't know where he was. I still listen to that stuff. I don't know where he was coming from, but it all worked. I think there was a magic to all the bands he had as well. The Mitch Mitchell Noel Redding band was really special, and the Band of Gypsies was really special. The only band he had, I wasn't so keen on the Woodstock band, where it was kind of all over the place, but he was brilliant. There's a great thing I saw the other day. There's people at Woodstock watching Hendrix, obviously, one of the greatest concerts of all time, and people going, "Yeah, but it's not true bypass, is it? The pedals." How can they be enjoying this?
I think if I remember, he's got a Univibe at that, and no, it's at the Isle of Wight. He's got a Univibe or something, and he actually you have to switch it on by hand. Yeah. It's like start a generator or something. He's playing, and he goes over just like,
it's
wax it on. Yeah, absolutely. But interesting. This whole list, you can tell it's American.
Yeah, so you haven't got. So I mean, no people.
As you said.
Hank's not there. Dave Murray and Adrian Smith aren't there. There's quite a few notable lack of younger people and women. St Vincent's not there, who I would have thought was a shoehorn in. Adrian Ballew's not there. There's lots of there's a lot of older white men, basically. Which is, I mean, Steve Hackett's not there, and Steve Howe aren't there, so you're not a lot of prog.
How do you quantify this stuff anyway? I mean, is it originality, or is it technique? Is it influence? It's
completely irrelevant, isn't it? I mean, but it's good that it shines a light on some interesting musicians, and But I wouldn't say that any of these 100 guitarists are better than any of the others.
No, I agree.
I'd say that they're all interesting players and remarkable players, and I think they all deserve their place on the list.
Yeah.
But I'd say, the last 10 years we've had, like I say, Annie Clark for sure. Is definitely someone who's influenced me as a musician. I think she's brilliant.
I agree.
And I think that it's obviously been voted by old people, older gentlemen. Kaki King's not there. There's lots of interesting guitar players coming through at the moment.
Yeah. It's like with all these things, it's always interesting to sort of hear other people's opinions.
And most controversy to Alan Holdsworth's not there.
Alan Holdsworth's not there. I mean, that's very true. That's very true.
I mean, I think Holdsworth is probably one of those ones that I'm surprised. How can you not have Alan Holdsworth there? But
So it's an interesting thing. There was I think I posted it on our page a little while ago, but there was a thing Victor Wooten was saying about, about what I was talking about earlier, the difference between being an amazing musician or whatever you want to call it, who influences other musicians, and being a populist musician, and how that works. And so, you could say, and Victor Wooten was talking about, he said, Alan Holdsworth, Alan Holdsworth is a phenomenal musician, but your mum's not heard of him,
Yeah, I mean,
but Alan Holdsworth has probably influenced a lot of the players who've gone on to play on more populist things, so then it's interesting, isn't it, how who influences who. So, like you say, with Clapton, personally, he's done a lot of good things, but
in context, it must have been very, very important at the time.
I mean, how many people picked up a guitar because of Clapton?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. But Clapton picked up a guitar because of Hank Marvin and people, and then got into the blues. I think he was. So many of that generation guitarists were influenced by Hank Marvin.
Who's the guy who did the guitar playing books?
Burt Weedon.
Yeah, see, I mean, I don't know if anybody knows Burt Weedon, but basically in England when was it, the 50s?
Yeah.
There was this guy called Burt Weedon, very sort of by numbers guitarist, very good guitarist, but he wrote a load of how to play guitar books that were, you watch if you watch a lot of the old documentaries, and you'll see all your Pete Townsends and your Paul McCartneys and all that, and they're all talking about Burt Weedon. So,
it's weird because in terms of sort of, I think Guthrie Govan's probably the best guitarist at the moment in terms of pure playing wise.
Yeah, as a guitarist, yeah, I agree. Yeah, his technique is terrifying.
He's much as I think obviously Vai and Satriani invented a lot of that stuff, but I think Guthrie's better at it. I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, we opened for the Aristocrats once, and he was like, "He's from another planet, isn't he?"
Yeah, he just can just do that stuff. I just don't even know how you do.
And also, to be fair, he's got the phrasing as well. He's got it all. He's a really good rounded player as well. He's not just.
Yeah, he's one of these guys that I think he's a bit of a chameleon, isn't he? Which it can be a good thing and a bad thing, but I think he could play however you wanted him to play.
But he's not like the guy from the Dream Theater guy.
Petrucci, is it? Yeah.
Who's also a phenomenal guitar player, but I can't. It's not my cup of tea at all. Whereas Guthrie, I can watch that and go, that's really clever. That is, what I mean. It's I mean, no offense to the Dream Theater fans in the world, but it's just not my cup of tea. But whereas Guthrie Govan, it's like, well, yeah, he is that good. He is that. He's not just practiced. He's actually good.
But as we were saying earlier, personally, if we're talking about guitar, like purely about guitar, I get more interested in hearing what St. Vincent is going to do next.
Yeah, me too, yeah. I think it's more like bands like Death Heaven I really like, and St. Vincent, and I think I'm more interested in, and I think most of the great guitar playing, very little of it was done in isolation. It's all part of a band or a great record, or I think that's the key to it. Really, is this was part of a really great album. I think that's the great, for me, the greatest guitar solo of all time is Mike Hammett's second guitar solo, Incarnated Solvent Abuse by Carcass.
I was watching some stuff last night of Carcass. Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about influence, Justin Broadrick.
Oh, what a guitarist! I mean, he was big deal for me, and the early Napalm stuff. And I love Jay-Z, and Jay-Z was because they're like super melodic post metal or post rock, but they're really innovative and really. There's a terrible sadness to Jay-Z's work. I mean, I was obsessed with Jay-Z for a while, and like
beautiful melancholy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just and I think that's for me more important than the fast playing and stuff. I mean, just. I think I want to make records that make people some sort of emotional reaction. I think that's the most important.
I think the problem with shred is I still every now and again I'll still watch and shred. Very rarely listen to it. I don't think it's not necessarily something you listen to. It's something you watch. There's very much a sort of like there's a Britain's Got Talent kind of vibe to it. You want to see it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean I've seen a couple of guitarists I've seen, not necessarily massive fans, my cup of tea, but really good at it. You know, like, Steve Rothery's really good, and Andy from Camel's really good as well, doing that bluesy sort of guitar. It's really good. I can see why it moves people, but with the shred stuff, it's interesting that the main place for shred now is Instagram.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Shred guitar is a big thing. So there's these guys who can do this really fast sort of lead stuff, and I mean I think the standard of guitar playing now is probably the highest it's ever been.
Yeah.
I think the level of playing is insane, but the level of innovation and songwriting, there's not enough Khaki Kings and St. Vincent's and Jesus and Jeff Heavens, and you know, there's not enough of the. I'd like to hear more innovation, because the thing about those bands I've just mentioned is you know them from one. You hear one song of theirs and it's a very distinctive sound.
What I was going to say was that the shred people I enjoy are people like Paul Gilbert, who just
He's great. Yeah,
he's great because he does it with so much self-awareness.
he's brilliant, and he's also he's on the quiet. He's a really good songwriter as well. He's a really good,
he's a brilliant songwriter.
Songwriter as well. So you know, it's a weird one because so much of this stuff, we grew up in the era of Vinnie Moore and Shrapnel Records and Steve Vai and Joe Satriani and you know, the Whittle, as it were, and obviously that's not about so much now. So but I think that list, it's all got some good stuff on it. I think any magazine, I think if Prog was to do one, or Guitar World, or any of these sort of magazines, you're going to get different stuff. So I'm glad we did it. It's a lot
it's always interesting to go through these things. It's
a lot of guitar. I'll see if I can find a bass one. We'll do that. No one.
There won't be one. There won't be one.
Should just be Geddy Lee 10 times. All right. Okay. Thanks, mate. We're done.
Yeah, we're all good.
Cheers for watching. Bye.